We are live here from the Nest on the campus of La Quinta High School. Kevin Pillow alongside Jim Eisenhocker, Philip Katofmo. The post-game show brought to you in part by KRP Broadcasting. Check us out on youtube.com/KRP Broadcasting. Well, it was, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, it was going to be a good game. If you asked me a week ago, it was going to be a blowout. Wasn't quite the blowout that we thought it was going to be. Was it the closest game we thought it was going to be? News and notes from this game, Phil. Did this game live up to the expectations you had? Because going into this game after the beatdown from Chaparral last week, the expectation level was very low for this young Blackhawks team.
Yeah, and it definitely showed out on the field. I had the same expectations. I was expecting La Quinta to have a tough time against Phillip Park, and that's exactly what happened tonight.
Jim, you and I spent most of the night broadcasting together, so we exchanged quite a bit of information about this game. The intensity level from La Quinta just wasn't there early on in the game. They finally got a little spark. They never took opportunities by the horns. We mentioned it ad nauseum. We go back to that second quarter. They get a turnover. They get that fumble that Benji Cordova creates. 2 plays later, they get that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, Villa Park that is, and then on that same play, they get a second unsportsmanlike conduct. That that drive results in 3 points. The 3 points that they held on for 2 quarters before they scored a touchdown late in this game. There were so many opportunities to capitalize on that spark, and they didn't. What did they need to do? What is Coach Armstrong going to point out in film tomorrow that needs to change between now and Heritage next Friday night?
Well, you said it yourself. The title of this game was missed opportunities on La Quinta's side. They had so many chances to make this a close game, and they started, like you said, came alive at the end there. But Coach Armstrong is going to sit down and he's going to point out, and it's going to be one thing, and that is intensity. We didn't see very little intensity out of the front for the La Quinta Blackhawks, and that's something that's going to need to change, especially with this rigorous preseason schedule they have, and DVL.
And it does not get any easier for La Quinta High School as they will travel on the road next week to take on Heritage, a team that they played in week 0 in an absolute barn burner on this very field just 12 months ago. Now they'll have to go on the road, a team that's a perennial powerhouse in that division and is a consummate CIF title contender year in and year out. Then they have to come back here and take on St. Bonaventure before playing Palm Desert. It does not get any easier. Some may say that Palm Desert game may be easy for them, but at the same time, it's going to be a mentally draining game for them, and they're going to come off, like I said in the broadcast, they could be a very good 0-4 team, but the problem is, mentally, they're still 0-4. Phil, with this team, it's young, it's slightly inexperienced. There's some great players on this team that have been on championship teams the last couple of years, but is there enough experience to carry them and will them through the next 2 preseason games and give them enough of an emotional edge and a mental edge going into the DVL season?
Well, I got to say this. This season, the DVL is it's a tight race for those last 3 spots. And with the way the La Quinta's playing right now, I had high hopes for them in the beginning with their defense. Their defense was excellent last year. I have hope for Justin Anderson, but I don't know. I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to go into the DVL season a little battered and bruised from playing all these Orange County teams.
Jim, you and I talked about in the broadcast, if they can make it, much like Palm Desert, if they can make it out of preseason 0-4, 1-3, or 2-2, and they can make it out healthy, they can almost go. They can consider themselves to be 4-0. Do you think if Palm Desert and La Quinta make it out of these 4 preseason games and get to that DVL season opener at 100% strength, no injuries, no major problems physically, that they've won probably the most valuable battle, and that is an emotional and a kind of I don't want to call it a mental battle, but a kind of a second-hand victory for them?
Well, we saw it last night with Palm Desert come out and absolutely smash on Shadow Hills High School. And there's a little bit of a scare there. You can see with Jake Vincent when he got injured, pulled him out. He didn't need to still be in there. That went on. Last I heard, everything's kosher on him. So it's good to see that he's healthy. So absolutely, if these 2 teams can get out of there can get out of the preseason without any injuries, it's going to be very good. Because if I would much rather play these harder teams, because if you schedule games with James Monroe Elementary School right down the street from here, you're not going to grow as a team. This builds character, these losses like this. This puts that fire in the belly of the La Quinta Blackhawks to say, I don't want to feel like this again, guys. Let's go out there, let's handle our business, let's take care of everything we need to do, and let's be the La Quinta Blackhawks.
A lot has been said. A lot of the coaches in their coaches series this summer said you can learn more in a loss than you can a win. Dan Armstrong's going to dissect this game. There was a lot of moral victories in this game. Villa Park is a very good football team. The score should have been a lot more lopsided than it was. 35-10 was a close game for this team in the form of Villa Park. That is a very good football team. Take a look at some of the things that happened in this game. Michael Lavina, I think, played very poised considering he didn't have a lot of time. It was very similar to what we saw last night with J.D. Lang in the Shadow Hills Palm Desert game. His offensive line did not give him a lot of time. Phil, it almost seemed like they were blown up from the get-go, that they had lost all their energy in the opening kickoff. A guy that jumps out at me is Robbie Palomini, usually a solid and anchor on this team. Maybe he was doing too much. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe he was blown up. Who knows? But Robbie Palomini was noticeably quiet in this game, as quiet as a guy can be for being in on every single play.
That's right. And to answer your question, I hope the standout player for me is definitely Michael Lavinia. That's the only real name that stands out to me right now. Justin Anderson didn't have the best game, but I don't know. Michael Lavinia did pretty great. So if they can go off the back of Michael Lavinia's successful night tonight and lead into the next game and hopefully into the DVL, La Quinta might have a couple hopes.
A couple other notes from this. You mentioned Michael Lavina, solid moral victory for him. 1 touchdown, but no interceptions, no turnovers in this game. Two other players that jump out at me. Jim, in the pregame, you picked up on our fantasy team. You picked up Benji Cordova, kind of a quiet player that had a pretty good night last week for Chaparral, as best you can for only scoring 1 touchdown. The other player that really jumped out at me was Ricky Vargas, a guy that's been on our radar for the last couple of years. This is a guy, again, who's earned his stripes. He's paid his dues, and he's worked his way up to the system, and he's finally he's reaping his benefits in this game. A great game tonight for Ricky Vargas, a great game, I think, all around for the offensive backfield for the La Quinta High School Blackhawks, but definitely Michael Lavina. We don't know what the final stats were on him. I believe he's got to have close to 100 yards passing, no interceptions, with the 1 touchdown that came late in that game. But again, I think another tip of the hat goes to Ricky Vargas. A great game tonight for the running back.
Not just Vargas, not just Cordova, not just Avina, anybody who was in the backfield, because the offensive line was not really getting their job done in terms of giving them the time that they needed. So Avina was taking the snap, and he had maybe a couple seconds to, divulge. Is that a word? It's a word here.
It's a word now.
It's a word here. It's a Jimism. Divulge what they needed to get done. So absolutely, like you said, Cordova looked fantastic. He was literally making his own lanes that he needed to do. And as a littler guy, I say that because I'm a littler guy, it's what we need to do. So hats off to him. Thank you for the fantasy points for our little league. I'm very happy with those. And he's earned himself a couple more touches for this Blackhawk team.
Games aren't over yet. We have one more tomorrow night. Trinity Classical Academy will play host to Desert Christian Academy in Santa Barbara. We'll see if Wyatt Stellenberger and Kenny Gagnon and the Conquerors can come away with a victory over TCA. And they are playing this game on 11-man rule, so a larger field, a wider field. Going to be a big game for Desert Christian and the Conquerors tomorrow. But wrapping up what we've seen here in the Valley tonight, kind of a little bit of what we expected. Obviously, the big night for Rancho Mirage, big night for Palm Springs. They hold on to a victory. La Quinta High School, 0-2, but Rancho Mirage and Palm Springs and Desert Mirage, 2-0, getting the job done. Real quick before we wrap things up, what is a bigger surprise to you, Jim? I'll start with you. What's a bigger surprise? That Palm Springs, considering how tough of a schedule they had, Tahquitz and Redlands, Tahquitz on the road, Redlands at home, and a barn burner of a game, 22-16, or Rancho Mirage going 2-0, beating 2 DVL schools, or Desert Mirage going 2-0, beating a DVL school in the form of Indio and beating an old DVL school in the form of Calexico last night. Who's the bigger 2-0 surprise?
For me, it's Rancho Mirage. You're talking about a young team that's still learning how to win, and they're picking it up pretty quick.
For you, Phil, who's the big surprise?
I'm going to say it's Palm Springs. This is a team that won the CIF last year, and a lot of people question how good is this team going to be, losing a couple seniors. In the season after they win a CIF, how are they going to bounce back and then just stay the same team? And it's nice to know that they still are as dominant as they were.
Tell you what, though, a team that we should look out for is the Golden Eagles of Desert Hot Springs. Will Littell has got that job. They got that team dialed in and working well. A big game against Cathedral City last week, and then a hard-fought victory last night against Coachella Valley High School. We'll have a full wrap-up of the entire week's action tomorrow morning. Prep Sports Weekly, 8 o'clock. On Team 1010 KXPS. Should be a lot of fun. We're going to talk sports medicine as well with Dr. Raj Sinha of Star Orthopedics and the sports doctors, as well as Melissa Walker and company. She'll be bringing her team captains from the Lady Knights. They're the 3-time defending Deanza League champions, looking for the four-peat as they head towards their inaugural season in the DVL in 2016. One more trip around the horn. Phil, any news and notes that anything you want to talk about from last night and tonight's action?
Watch out for Rancho Mirage.
And Jim, any closing thoughts? Your final notes from Thursday and Friday night's action?
Dan Armstrong is the old ball coach. If anybody's going to whip this team into shape, it's going to be him.
Two perfect notes that wrap up week one. Dan Armstrong playing the part of Steve Spurrier. He's going to get this team whipped into shape. They could very well go 0-4. They'll be a very good 0-4 team, but they could also go 1-3 and 2-2. Rancho Mirage, LD Matthews, and those Rattlers. They've got a tall order ahead of them with Rubidoux, and of course coming back home against Hawkwoods in 2 weeks. So a lot of storylines to be watched. Kevin Pillow, Jim Eisenacher, Philip Catalfimo, broadcasting live from the Birdcage, the Nest, whatever you want to call it, Blackhawk Stadium. We're on the campus of La Quinta High School. Next Friday, we will see you on the campus of Palm Desert High School with these two guys calling the action. And, of course, they will have the post-game show for you from Palm Desert. I hopefully will have a post-game show for you from Shadow Hills. So good night, everybody, from La Quinta for KRP Broadcasting and Team 1010 KXPS.